Alright, I caught a little bit of a breather this week, so I got a little bit of time to film. I want to give a big thank you to CTP Cryogenics, and let's take a look at what we got over here. So I'm building a diff for a SR20 powered Corolla. The thing's getting a swap right now, so cause LSD, motive, ring and pinion, I think it's a 4-1. If you notice, this thing is kind of an interesting color, right? It's because thanks to CTP Cryogenics, I got the ring and pinion gear set both deep cryogenic treated and then WPC treated. So the WPC explains this interesting finish. These gears actually used to be black, and now they are this like signature WPC dull gray color. And yeah, sure enough, when I got these out of the box, these were like super smooth. So some interesting things to note, I'm having a little bit of a tough time getting like a legible gear pattern. It actually looks better on the camera than it does in real life, but I almost want to say it's how good the WPC treatment works on these gears that I'm having a hard time getting a legible gear pattern. But yeah, if you've set up gear sets that have been WPC treated, let me know in the comments below. Maybe I'm just a dum-dum. But luckily this motive gear set, I know it's tough to see, but right there, 2.037, it actually gives me the pinion depth to set the pinion to. So I was able to set it really close. I think I'm 0.0005 off. Yeah, because that's the shim I used of the required pinion depth. And one thing that helps me out is that, you know, if you look at the gears carefully, you can see on the face of the teeth in manufacturing when the ring and pinion are lapped together, you can see the pattern it embeds onto the gear teeth. And this is even more apparent on Toyota gear sets where they actually like paint these red, paint a few teeth red from factory. And then what's helped me a lot is like I can, by setting pinion depth, I can copy the old pattern that got embedded when they lapped the gear set. So it looks like I'm getting pretty close. And because the patterns, like I can't get that, I'm having trouble getting like a really legible pattern. And you should be doing this anyway. I'm gonna do at least 1 or 2 more paintings of these gear and then check the pattern again. So yeah, why don't we do that? So if we walk over here, check it out. The customer gave me the entire rear end for a restoration. This has been sandblasted, powder coated, and then thoroughly cleaned afterwards. And yeah, when we're done with this, the customer is gonna get a drop-in, restored, and ready to go rear end for his SR Corolla. Sorry about the mess over here. But yeah, also some brand new panic axles, and special request, we got some ARP studs to match the customer's front ARP studs. All right, let's get to it. All right, so I got this 180 off of the other side. I'm gonna paint like 3 or 4 teeth. Check the gear pattern on the other side. It looks okay, the original gear pattern, but I want to give myself a little bit of sanity, so you know, never hurts to double check. Yeah, I really use gear marking compound. Everything else I've used, like grease, Prussian blue, all that stuff, like what a waste of my time. Just get the real stuff. Alright, that's like 4 or 5 teeth. I'm gonna roll the ring gear back and forth a few times. Usually I only need to do this twice, but again, I think because the WPC, I'm kind of getting a hard time getting a legible pattern. So you'll watch me roll the ring gear back and forth like a few times, just so I can get like a more defined pattern on this guy. I keep this clean red rag in my like diff building toolbox, and the purpose of this rag is actually to hold on to the pinion flange. And what I'm trying to do is simulate a load on the ring gear, because just like when it's running in a car, the gear set's loaded. If you don't do this, if you try to get a gear pattern unloaded, it's not going to be correct. You know, I've explained to people in the past before who've tried to set up ring and pinion. Loaded, when you load this up, the pattern's only going to walk up the gear set. You want to do your best to simulate how this is actually going to be loaded up in the car. I'm going to roll this thing down until it comes close to the pinion, or I should say the painted portion comes close to the pinion. Grab my wrench, put it on one of the ring gear bolts, and then move your head to the side. One time this slipped off the bolt and I smacked myself in the head. So unless you enjoy that kind of stuff, move your head to the side. Don't be like me. I'm gonna grab the pinion flange, try to put as much load as I can, or simulate as much load as I can, and then you'll watch me move this thing back and forth. And what I'm trying to do is get that gear pattern, get those two gears to like force themselves against each other and get like a good legible pattern on my gear marking compound. So let's go do that. You see, I'm using a lot of force. Alright, let's go take a look. Alright, so we're back to the original pattern, because actually the second pattern I did was even uglier to read than the original. So we're going to take a look at this guy. Long story short, my gut feeling says to run this, and based on my gut and experience, I'll give you a few reasons why. So I know based on the numbers that are scribed on top of the pinion head and my measurements that my pinion depth is set correctly, just based on measurements. And then also this pattern, this guy's really ugly, but it matches up really close to the lapped in pattern. It's also centered heel toe, face to flank really well, despite how ugly that guy looks. I guess another thing of confidence for me is that lapped in, the pattern that was lapped in looks, you know, equally as ugly, and it matches up in the same spots as my new pattern. The coast side I really don't like, but again, it matches up with the lapped in pattern. And then also on a new gear set, it's the drive side that's gonna be our most important. So again, based on my gut and experience, I know it looks ugly, but yeah, I'm gonna run this. So I'm gonna keep these shims as my pinion depth. The next step, I'm gonna take this all apart, and we're gonna take out our setup bearings that I put for the pinion, press in our real bearings, and then set our pinion bearing preload with our Weir Solid Spacer, thanks to Battle Garage RS. Alright, so I got my LSD and ring gear assembly cleaned the marking compound off, got this guy set to the side. Before I clean off the head of the pinion, just another like vote of confidence for myself. Sometimes you can actually read the pattern on the teeth of the head of the pinion, and so ideally what you're looking for is for this pattern to flutter out to the center of the tooth. So I think if the pattern's too close, that means too shallow. Too far out this way, that means the pattern's too deep. So yes, sure enough, on some of these it flutters out into the middle. And then same thing, based on the pattern that was left over after the lapping, these two patterns match up really close. So I mean, yeah, just another vote of confidence for my pinion depth. Gearinstalls.com has been a great resource for what is a good and bad pattern, and he does so many diffs. So yeah, check out that website if you want to see like good and bad patterns. So yeah, let's get our pinion bearing preload set up. I'm gonna put these two in the parts washer to get rid of all the rest of the gear marking compound and anti-seize I put on these things. We're gonna be using these two shims. Check out my my diff holding fixture. We got the pumpkin powder coated as well, and then just a few special in-house touches. You can see, just did some light deburr work with an angle grinder. Nothing too fancy, but oh, you can especially see on this one, nothing gets assembled here dirty, and if there's burrs, I'll clean it off, because that's just a stress riser for a potential crack, or you know, potentially that burr will break off and then damage something inside the diff. So, small Autohaus touches. Alright, got new bearings pressed on the pinion. I got this torqued to about 80 foot-pounds. On final assembly, I'll do 90 to 100, and when you really torque this guy down to spec, you'll actually change the bearing preload, of course, you know, because you're actually crushing this guy a little more. So I got a .015 shim in the solid spacer. We have like 0 deflection, so yeah, lucked out on first try. We're gonna take a little bit of shim out of there. Looks like Weir recommends 0.003 to 0.004, so we might try like a 0.01 shim next, and then we'll get out our our dial torque wrench and we'll check the turning torque on this guy. Alright, so after 3 tries, 3 shim selections, and a bowl of instant noodles, we're at this point. I got a 0.008 shim in here. I could feel that there's some resistance on this guy. Sure enough, just about like 25 inch-pounds of rotating force. Our target, 13 to 15. So I got 0 preload with a 12, and I get 25 with an 8. So we're splitting hairs, but I mean, at least we're getting close. I think I'm gonna try a 10. I have a 9 and a 10 I can try. So yeah, let's roll some dice and find out. Alright, great success after a can of Mountain Dew. 10 is what I want. So if you remember, our preload spec was 13 to 15. So why do I want this 10, you're asking? So yeah, I got a 0.01 shim in there. And then it's just about 10 inch-pounds of turning torque. So remember, I only have 80 foot-pounds on this. I'm actually gonna take this all the way down between 90 and 100. So by experience, I know when I torque this down to spec, the bearing preload is actually going to increase a hair once I torque this down to spec. So it's at a little, like between 10 and 12 right now. I guarantee you once I torque this down to, like, we'll just call it 90, I'm going to get to that 13 to 15 that I want. So I'm going to take this all back apart, getting ready to do final assembly. We're going to put our splash shield. We got an OEM pinion seal and then these nuts. And once we have this assembled, we're gonna come back. Before I put this together, this is what my 0.01 shim solid spacer looks like. Once I put this guy in, this is gonna be your last chance to lubricate that guy. So once this is together, I'm gonna put gear oil and then spin the pinion to make sure that bearing stays lubricated. Your splash shield's gonna go on top. We're gonna put in our pinion seal. That guy, 90 foot-pounds, and we'll come back. Alright, got my OEM pinion seal in there. One thing you want to check after you drive this guy in, look inside, make sure that spring for the lip of the seal didn't fall down. A really common mistake I see from diffs I get from other shops, or diffs that other shops have worked on, is that the pinion seal actually has a 5 mil deep drive-in depth. And I know the other shop didn't follow the service manual because the seal will be flush, and then this dust shield part will be totally chewed off because this wasn't driven into that 5 mil depth. Alright, I'm gonna put on my flange. I got anti-seize on this guy. New gear set, new flange. The spline fit is actually kind of loose, so I'm actually gonna put some red Loctite on the ID of this to help secure these two guys better. There's green sleeve lock. I don't want to do that because then these guys will be married till the end of time. So red Loctite is going to be my weapon of choice. I'm going to put anti-seize on both sides of this, and that'll help with getting an accurate torque value. I'm going to do 90 foot-pounds, and then right there, ding, and then this guy should be totally secure. I will come back when this is together. Alright, got this guy fully assembled. Remember 10 inch-pounds last time? Check it out. Yeah, just about 15 inches turning torque. So yeah, the seal is going to add some drag to the turning torque, but again, in my experience, it's like negligible. So don't even worry about the seal. But you guys just saw, once we have our final torque, I gained just between just about 3 to 5 inch-pounds after this guy is finally assembled. So yeah, why don't we document that? Pinion preload with seal. We're gonna call that 15 inch. Alright, home stretch. So I am much happier with this pattern after everything's set up. So you can see nice wide centered and fluffy pattern. Check out the drive side. Same thing. We'll take one more look when I get the diff off. I am checking total preload right now, and I don't have that much. If I have 16 total, that means I only gained 1 inch-pound of preload. So if For the carrier bearings, I want OEM spec between 2.6 and 4.3. I actually would like more, so I'm gonna aim for at least 4 inches. Carrier bearing preload, so the amount of preload on these two carrier bearings is important because it prevents ring gear deflection. I have heard that you can never have too much carrier bearing preload, so we're gonna aim for 4, so our final measurement should be about 19 total preload. Alright, so adjusting carrier bearing preload, got my spanner tool. You only adjust the opposite side for carrier bearing preload. Don't touch the other side. You touch the other side, you're gonna change the backlash. So I tightened this almost like 2.5 notches to get that extra 4 inches of inch-pounds of carrier bearing preload, and then hopefully you guys can see that should be pretty close to 19 on average when I was doing this both ways. Yeah, exactly what we want. All of our turning preloads are within spec, so total 19, and then we got 4 inches carrier bearing preload, well within the top end of the spec, which I want for a performance application. I measured a backlash on a whole bunch of teeth. I tightened this up a little bit, so actually all these should go down by 0.001. So I set it, as you can see by this, there's a little bit of variation, but still within spec. I want to set it on the tight side because by experience I know on your first drive out after braking it's going to open up 1 thou. So if my target is 0.007 for this, so I'm going to set it to 0.006, and so I know once the diff is broken in, it'll be at the spec I want. So yeah, this guy should be good to go. I am going to torque these down, I think 65 foot-pounds, put in the locks, I think 12 foot-pounds. And then yeah, we should be able to get ready to install that into the rear axle housing. Thanks, Dad. Alright, it's been a long time, but finally ready to get this guy together. So I pulled all the studs out previously to get this guy powder coated. So reinstalled all the studs with some red Loctite. Like I said again, we thoroughly cleaned this guy, so same thing, both of the baffles inside. We took both of these baffles out and same thing. Brand new panic axles, special requested ARP studs. Yep, should be ready. We'll throw the diff in there. Almost forgot, got a plethora of new stuff from Toyota. So paper seals. These metal seals we just cleaned up and reused perfectly fine. For the pumpkin hardware itself, brand new nuts and lock washers. For these backing plates, which also got powder coated, we got new studs plus the locking washers for this guy as well. All right, day 2. There's a sky rhine. There's an angry dog. We got the axle assembled. I'm about to drive in the new axle seals. If you guys seen previously, I used to use like this piece of pipe that Grand Mighty Eric from Corner Balance made for me, but I saw another video on YouTube. Someone uses this Harbor Freight driver that I already had. So let's see, 72 millimeter one. Almost fits until the end, so if I shaved probably like 2 mil off of this thing, we'd probably be good, but that's for another day. So I'm gonna get the seal started with this, and then 65 mil looks like the correct OD. So what I'm gonna have to do is like I'm gonna drive it flush, and I might have to do this towards the end to hit it on the OD of that lip of the axle. There is a drive-in depth spec, but actually if you just hit it flush against this lip right here, so the seal's flush with this, you'll be fine, don't worry about it. Let's check out the final assembly. Yeah, brand new panic axles. We're gonna get some paint on these drain plugs, the drain and fill, before we put this guy back in. And again, custom requested ARP studs. Cool, I got that engine block over there. Then I got a sky rhine to work on.
So yeah, thanks for watching, you guys.